welcome to today's show, Legacy Living, Make Your Life Count. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Burgess, passionate, inspirational speaker, author, poet, and entrepreneur. Good morning, and welcome to Legacy Living, Make Your Life Count. I'm delighted that you joined me this morning. Today is Wednesday, March 28th. I want to give a big thank you to those of you who are listening in today all around the world. I'm delighted and so grateful that you tuned in. I sure hope you're enjoying a fabulous day and that you're having a fantastic week, because you know what? In the grand song of the universe, life is so very short. It's short and oh so sweet and precious. So I hope you're making a difference in your own life, because when you do, you also make a difference in somebody else's life. Now, a lot of folks want to make their life count for something, and they ask me, Dr. Gloria, how do you do that? Well, it's really very simple, very simple. You make your life count day by day, step by step, moment by moment, every single day, 365, 24/7. That's what Legacy Living, Make Your Life Count is all about. You can learn more about Legacy Living, Make Your Life Count by visiting the Gloria Burgess website. That's Gloria, B as in boy, Burgess.com. The Gloria Burgess website, Gloria, B as in boy, Urgess.com, or by visiting Facebook. And that's facebook.com/Dr. Gloria Burgess, PhD /. Now that's all smushed together, and that's DR for doctor, DR, Gloria, Burgess, PhD /. Today, I want to talk with you about one of my favorite topics, and that's daring to wear your soul on the outside, daring to live out loud, as some people like to say. Now, specifically, I'm going to focus on a person who stepped up, who said, you know what? I want more in my life. I want to be more, I want to know more, and I want to serve more. I want to wear my soul on the outside. Now, I hope that this story about this amazing person who has transformed his life will inspire you as it has inspired me. And if you are inspired, I will share more about how you too can make the same kind of shift in your own life. Later in today's program, I'll share with you some resources so that you can do exactly that, so that you can equip yourself to make the kind of difference in your own life that you will hear about in this inspiring story that I'm going to share with you today. So once again, folks, today's focus is daring to wear your soul on the outside. Now, if that sounds familiar, it's because I have a book with that name, Dare to Wear Your Soul on the Outside. It's all about daring to live out loud. So, what time is it? I'm so glad you asked. It's time to make yourself a cup of tea or coffee. It's time to get that tall glass of water or a smoothie. It's time to put your feet up and relax in your favorite chair, right? Now, don't forget your pen and your notepad, because you're going to want to take notes today. We're going to have an awesome time, okay? Now, before I jump into today's show, I just want to take a moment to welcome you. If you're just joining us, I'm your host, Dr. Gloria. This is Legacy Living, Make Your Life Count. I'd like to extend a very special welcome to those of you who are joining my show, or if you're joining Talk Network Radio for the very first time. Let me tell you, you are in for a real treat. I'm excited to have you listening in today, and I'm deeply honored that you've allowed me to be part of your day so you can be inspired by the ideas and resources to make your life count. Today's program is all about daring to wear your soul on the outside, or, as some people would say, daring to live out loud. Now, this is an important topic. Why? Because we all want to enjoy and live the life we love, right? A life of joy and a life of service. Now, one of my favorite poets, Muriel Rukeyser, reminds us. She reminds us that the world is not made up of atoms. The world is not made up of atoms, she says. Well, if it's not made up of atoms, what is it made of? Well, I'm so glad you asked. It's made up of stories. I just love that, don't you? Now, let's just noodle about that for a moment, right? No matter where you live in the world, you hear stories, right? You hear stories from the time you're born. I remember when I was pregnant with my daughter, she actually heard stories from me while she was still in my womb, right? So you hear stories from the time you're born, maybe even before you're born. You hear stories as a babe in arms, stories told around the dinner table with your family, around the hearth. You hear stories when you go to school, stories in the lunchroom, in the hallways, stories when you're ready to leave school, when you're ready to graduate, so that you can perhaps move on to college. And then when we apply to college, they ask us to share stories about why we want to go there, right? And what we hope to accomplish there. Then, once we arrive, we hear stories about the college or the university we're attending, and more stories as we move through our studies and then out into the workplace. And once we have a job, we hear story after story after story. So stories, then, are a very, very big part of our lives. In fact, they're so much a part of our life, we don't even realize the presence or the potency or the power that they have in our lives. Did you know that stories are how we make meaning, how we make sense of our world? That's right. Stories help us chart and navigate the many, many waters of our lives. They actually help us as we move through the moments, the hours, and the days of our lives. And you know what else? In many cultures all over the world, stories are actually thought of and even revered as medicine. Yes, stories are thought of and revered as medicine. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, let's take a look at that. Stories are referred to as medicine because they help ground us. And when we lose our way, as we often do in our fast-paced world, stories help us. They enable us to come home, to come back. They help us realign with who we are and to come back into harmony with whose we are. So they help us to come back to ourselves, right? They help us know who we belong to. Now that's good, and it's so important, isn't it? So stories are medicine that help ground us, and they help us come home. They help us come back into harmony with who we are and with whose we are. Now, this is true whether we're talking about an individual person, a person like you or me, and it's also true if we're talking about a family, a community, a team, or an organization. Now, just a few days, I was with a client, And our specific focus was on team building. And you know what? The resources we used for team building, the resources we used to get from here to there were stories. That's right, stories. In other words, what needed to be surfaced and the meaning that needed to be surfaced and made visible and discussed, put on the table, so to speak, were the stories that lived inside of each team member. We surfaced the stories so that the team could be intentional about becoming the best team possible, right? To put their best foot forward, so to speak, to do their best in serving their stakeholders. Now, this particular team was a group of doctors, a group of physicians, and their stakeholders, well, they were the patients, right? And the families of the patients, as well as other doctors and nurses and physician assistants and so many more. Now, the same is true no matter what kind of professional group I happen to be working with. It could be a team of teachers, a team of marketers, attorneys, administrators, civic leaders, stockbrokers, artists, doesn't matter. Their common ground is found and surfaced through stories. So, as I said earlier, stories are very powerful medicine. Now, it's been said that stories are small doses of what matters. And it is in the telling of the stories that's so important. Now, why is that? Well, because the telling is what releases the medicine, right? The telling is what soothes our pain, right? And it shares and amplifies our joy. I just love that. Let me repeat it, okay? So the telling is what releases the medicine. The telling is what soothes our pain, and it's also what amplifies and shares our joy. In the language called Kiswahili, the words habari gani means what's the news, or what's happening now. So in the next little while, I will share with you a small dose of what's happening now, of what matters in the lives of ordinary people, including some of the people who are very close to me. In fact, today I want to share one particular story with you. And this story that I will share breathes the timeless universal truths of what I call the 7 sacred promises. They are truths that mentor us in ways of being that are older than time, truths that breathe just beneath the surface of our ever-busy lives. They are the truths that when we make them visible in our life, we can actually draw on them with conscious intention to shape our daily choices, actions, and decisions. So, what are the 7 sacred promises? They are gratitude, faith, love, vision, integrity, creative action, and legacy. So gratitude, faith, love, vision, integrity, creative action, and legacy. Now, you actually hear me talk about these 7 sacred promises every week on this show in one way or another. And today we will hear more about these sacred promises through the inspiring story I'm going to share with you today. This story begins with a small dose of what matters. And it's taken from some of the big themes in one of my poems, a poem that's all about legacy living, making your life count, right?